David Bernstein's a political reporter for The Phoenix in Boston. We're going to talk about the Senate race between incumbent Republican Senator Scott Brown. The challenger is Elizabeth Warren, who was here in studio with us just a couple of months ago. David, thanks for joining us. Let's start with the latest polls. I'm reading a whole bunch of different stuff about what is going on in the polls. What's the consensus?
Well, there were several polls that showed Elizabeth Warren has moved ahead by a few points, but there was also one that showed it even and one that showed Scott Brown ahead by a few points. Most people that I talked to, with the campaigns or as close to the campaigns, they really believe that it's about even 45-45 with a sliver of 10% who could go either way, and that's where the battle's going to be.
How do these polls compare to the polls when it was Martha Coakley running against Scott Brown around the same amount of time, about 45 minutes before the election?
Coakley was showing,
days, that is.
Yes, Coakley was showing much better at this stage. We weren't getting as many polls, certainly public polls. It was a special election happening in an odd time, and nobody really thought. The national groups didn't really think that there was much at play here, so there wasn't as much polling being done. But certainly the internal polls and what few polls there were on the race showed her at a much better level at this point. But Scott Brown is the incumbent. He's popular, and he starts off in a strong position and really has been in front by a small amount through most of the summer. And this is really showing Elizabeth Warren has caught up.
Yeah, so like you said, that was a special election. Do you have a sense of how this Senate election taking place on the same ballot as the presidential election, one where there is an incumbent Democratic president, what effect might that have on this Senate election?
It's a huge difference, and it really is enough. Scott Brown won by about 5 points, more or less, in that special election, and the Democratic Party here calculates out that just the change in the turnout alone more than makes up for that 5-6 point advantage from that past race. You just get a completely different turnout for a presidential election with Barack Obama on the top of the ticket than you had for the Senate election that took place in the middle of the winter an odd time. So that's a huge advantage for the Democrats. But of course, Scott Brown makes up for that by having been in office and gaining more publicity, name recognition, and popularity. So that sort of evens it out.
What about how this particular Senate race could affect the balance of the Senate going into the next session?
Well, this is the big thing: is that a lot of people are pointing to this race as potentially the one that could tip the Senate one way or the other. It's going to be quite close. It's currently 52-48 Democrats, but Republicans have some good opportunities to gain seats. This is one of the very few opportunities that Democrats have to gain one back, and a lot of people think this could be the tipping point, and that's going to be a big part of Elizabeth Warren's pitch going forward. Is for those people who are planning to vote for Barack Obama, who like the idea of Democrats in office. Even if you like Scott Brown personally, voting for him means potentially putting Mitch McConnell and other Republicans in charge of the Senate who can't afford it.
Last thing on this, David, the effect of Mitt Romney, former Massachusetts governor, Republican. We talked already about the effect that President Obama being at the top of the ticket may have. What about a former Massachusetts governor who is also a Republican? Can we say anything about what effect that might have on the Senate election?
Well, this is what I would say on this. It certainly hurts in a sense that Romney's going to lose by a very wide margin here in his home state, one of his home states, and that does not help any Republicans below him on the ticket. But I would make this argument that Romney is better for Scott Brown than pretty much any other Republican would have been at the top of that ticket. If you try to imagine a Rick Santorum or Rick Perry or Tim Pawlenty, that would have really alienated northeastern, New England voters. They really would have had it out for the Republican Party and really would have caused a real problem for Scott Brown. Whereas Mitt Romney, people here disliked for personal reasons, because he abandoned the state, or he conned them, whatever their reasons are.
It's more personal and doesn't Romney doesn't make them angry at the Republican Party the way that those other people will. So it's a matter of particularly if Romney hurts Brown less than most women's votes.
All right, David Bernstein, political reporter for the Phoenix in Boston. We're going to watch the race. Thanks so much, David.
My pleasure. Thanks.
All right, let's take a break. Stay tuned. Plenty more to come after the break.